Welcome to the Swipe Right Effect podcast, where we will be sharing with you the power to get unstuck by swiping right on yourself. Your host, author C.K. Collins, aka Kelly, gets personal with her guests, sharing stories of themselves getting unstuck with wisdom and guidance. Where do you feel stuck? Are you waiting to get your new life started after a big change? You've come to the right place. Kelly's book is available on Amazon and through your local bookstores. Look for the Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. Kelly's interviews with 10 friends from around the world unlock powerful truths to getting your new life started. So with that said, welcome to the Swipe Right Effect podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. We are starting season 2 and I am really excited. We had a fun guest today, but I want to catch you up real quick on what's been going on with me. Kelly, pen name C.K. Collins. Real quick, want to bring up my book, The Swipe Right Effect, The Power to Get Unstuck. And since season 1, I've also launched my second book, The Swipe Right Effect Workbook. I had a lot of wonderful feedback from people saying, I wish you'd left room in the book to work on your empowerment practices, because every chapter has an empowerment practice to help the reader choose themselves and move forward in their life. And so I made a workbook and I expanded the empowerment practices. You can find them on Amazon. And I also want to tell you that as the year went by, as 2023 went by, I was gathering with a lot of women. My intention word was gather. And so I was at book groups and book signings and book discussions and talks at bookstores and libraries. And so I did a lot of gathering last year, and it was so amazing to learn, first of all, what people thought of the book. But it also was about them telling me their stories. And what I found out and learning from them and their beautiful stories and their beautiful hearts is that really my book was about empowerment, but something even a little more essential, which is self-care. And so I created a self-care checklist that has 10 essential questions to ask yourself to determine your level of self-care. And so you can get that, and I'll put it in the show notes, but you can get that at ckcollins.co/self-care. It's 10 questions to ask yourself, yes or no. And then I give some advice on what that means once you have your score. And so I hope that you'll go check that out, ckcollins.co/self-care. Okay, so let's keep going. So Lou Redmond, I was introduced to him recently, and he is a really amazing guy. And Lou is an author, a meditation teacher, a life coach, and an inspirational speaker. Sounds familiar. I think we might get along. His meditations have been listened to over 1 million times, and his online courses have enrolled 50,000 students. That is so impressive. I feel like I'm just a total newbie compared to Lou, so I'm really I'm impressed by those numbers. He's the host of his own podcast called The Art and Business of Meditation, where he helps people make an impact and income using meditation. Lou is also the founder of One Mindful Education, an organization that brings meditation, yoga, and mindfulness into schools across the country. Just amazing. All right, Lou, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
I'm so happy to be here, Kelly.
Awesome. So when I was researching you, we were introduced by a mutual friend. And so it was just kind of, she's one of those people that you just trust. She's going to bring you good people. And she did. But I wanted to research you and find out more about your coaching practice and your book and you do a lot of things. And I watched one of your speeches at school, and it was just really inspiring, and love that you do so many things. But I also
Too many
loved when I
things sometimes.
I can relate. Just today, I think I've been in 5 different buckets. Yeah. But I love when I went to your website, the first thing I saw was love who you are and love what you do.
Hmm.
And I think that is something I deeply desire for my audience and my clients, is to love who you are. And I think I think there's just not enough of that right now in the world. And especially the last 3 years, there's been a lot of shift in mental health. And I think we got to get back to the self-love. Do
Yes.
you have advice for people on getting back to self-love?
Yeah, great question. And I think a big part of the coaching work that I do is really identifying what is getting in the way of our capacity to love ourselves, to feel love, to feel all the beautiful qualities of presence that get stuck in some ways, get stuck in certain patterns, certain habitual ways of being and perceiving not only the outside world, but perceiving ourselves. And so, as a tool for someone listening that maybe has a tough time loving themselves, I like to use the language of parts work. And so to not say that I have a tough time loving myself, but obviously, with context, we'd get curious about, okay, well, which part, what's showing up here? Like, oh, I think I'm not good at getting things done, right? And that gets in the way. And so, okay, well, let's look at this part that is critiquing yourself for for not being good at yourself or whatever it might be. And so we would engage it not as you, but as a part of you and create a
Mm,
relationship with that part. And when we do that, we open up some more spaciousness internally so we're not hijacked by our critical mind. That's a common thing for everyone, right? We can be so critical about
right.
ourselves. And so we can kind
Mm-hmm.
of engage in that. And what we often find almost, every time, Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, Internal Family Systems, wrote a book called No Bad Parts. In
Mm,
that critic in its various forms has some benefit in our life, that it was there for us when we really needed it, and
mm,
it's been doing a great job all these years. And often just by creating space, and there's a whole process to work with this, but in some ways you can do this in a journaling practice too, and starting to have a dialogue with it and getting to know what its job is and getting to understand it for it's what it's trying to do, and honoring it. It's like
mm,
we have these parts of ourselves that are trying to be okay, and yes, they might be doing it in not great ways, but they're doing a job, and they think that they're doing a job that they need to do to protect us from something,
mm,
or to keep us safe, to get us validation, to get us love, to get
right.
us all these different things. And when we can just recognize, just as someone who would go to a company, and if they were doing their job, their boss to recognize them is powerful, right? Imagine doing your
Mm-hmm.
job really well, but your boss wants to get rid of you. That's kind of how we act towards ourselves, right? It's like these,
Ourselves. Wow.
yeah. So these parts of
Very good analogy.
ourselves are doing, yeah, they're doing good work, and so honoring that work that they're doing in a intention with an intention to not need them to change. And what happens,
Mm-hmm.
the paradox of change is when we don't need something, we don't force something to change, it can then relax and often soften and actually create sustaining change rather than saying you need to go away. And I've used to coach differently. This is, a newer paradigm for me. I used to do a style of coaching that was like, okay, we're gonna, you know you can yell at it, you could say get away, you can like push it away, and I find that
Right.
that's creating sometimes more resistance. But it could work. This could
Mm.
work for a little while, but deeper change happens, I think, in really letting it kind of naturally unfold. So, that self-love. Um, I think it's getting to the piece of what keeps us from um, being connected. And when we're connected in
Mm.
that way, we can have we tend to just be nicer, not only to ourselves but to everyone. So it's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, a state of grace. I took a class the other night,
Mm,
along with my students. We had a master class, and our teacher was just amazing. And she was talking about a state of grace and how if you can live in a state of grace, it releases you to be curious, be creative, and how that presence that you have is, when you're living in that state, is it your presence is a better experience for all of those around you. And I was just like, that blew my mind. It was like, your presence is how other people experience you. I mean, and that is a powerful statement. It makes me want to, bring it when I have an interaction with my children or a friend,
yes.
like really be present so that they're having a good experience when they're with me. I just thought that was, I mean, you want to be authentic as well, but wow, I mean, I thought it was a beautiful statement.
Think it starts with presence, and you're reminding me of something that one of my coaches and teachers of my training talked about in this style of coaching was a dance between work and grace, meaning that like
Mm.
you get in a coaching relationship, you do this work together, and then once you kind of can shift something, grace starts to follow and unfold until something else some other impediment comes up. So it's kind of like this dance of we're working on something, and then we're letting grace kind of do what it does, and then we're working on something, and so there's
Hmm.
kind of this nice dance of both. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah. Um, I on your coaching page at louredmond.com, it said a foundation of your coaching practice is that you, the coachee, are already whole, perfect, and complete. And I think that I love that, to start with that belief. And then I'm just curious, like, how do you take it from there on I'm not perfect because, my kids are screwed up or
Yeah.
just something, whatever it is they believe about themselves. Like you said, you're not good at something, or you're not as good at your work, or can those two ideas of I've made mistakes in my life still meld with being whole, perfect, and complete?
Absolutely. And the journey is a journey of holding, WHOLING, and integrating. Um,
Mm.
in yoga, they they call the kind of imprints of energetic distortion samskaras. Um, in more scientific language, they might call them little or capital T traumas that are stuck in the body. I'm sure a lot of people that are getting into this work
Mhm.
understand the impact of the of trauma and what it does to the body. And so there's things that have been distorted within us that create distortions in our life, that create a filter of how
Mm.
we see things. But that doesn't mean that underneath the distortion wasn't already a wholeness that's here, right? So it's breaking out of a self-improvement paradigm, which says that, okay, this is what's missing. I feel like this is missing, and so I'm going to create a plan to get that thing. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't move towards goals or you reach out, but you just shift where you're starting it from, because inherently in a self-improvement plan, you start from lack. You start from I don't have,
Mm.
and you have to then step forward to try to get something, because we think that we're trying to fill a void, but everything that we actually want we want because of this feeling we think it's going to give us, right? We think the
Mm-hmm.
relationship's going to give us a feeling of XYZ. We think the money's going to give us a feeling of XYZ. And so the way to turn this on its head is, instead of one of my teachers says, instead of saying what is missing, you start with the question of what if nothing is missing? And then
Mm.
it's like, whoa, what, like, if nothing is missing, that means I have everything I need right here and now. And so what's getting in the way of me accessing that right now? And that's kind of everything that I just said before, right? The parts of ourselves that might be getting in the way, that think that we need this thing. And so when we drop into that work and we start to access that deeper resource in ourselves, that deeper state um, of whatever that feeling, that quality, we call it, of presence, that we think that is missing, whether it's like money will give me more freedom, or a relationship will give me more love, or a house will give me more stability. Whatever we're seeking, like, if we can find the freedom, the love, and stability that's already within us, not
Mm.
only do we um, feel more whole and at peace, but what happens is we have more clarity, and we take actions in that direction with more creativity. We, like, it's
Mm.
okay to have a desire and a vision for your life. That's amazing, and I encourage everyone to. But imagine, instead of do, seeking it in order to get something, imagine if you already have anything and you're just expanding. Now you're just
Mm.
expanding your capacities. You're expanding, but during the whole time, you're feeling a sense of fulfillment and wholeness. You don't need to get to the end of the line to feel it. So that's kind of, the premise, that we're all whole, perfect, and complete. It's like, you would never tell a baby that's born that they're not enough, right? They
Mm.
just came out into this world, and this is who they are. But life happens, and a lot of life happens, and a lot of things happen that shut us down. Maybe we get bullied, maybe we get in an accident where our body just doesn't, like, is tensing. So there's so many of these things that can happen that distort the prana, or the chi, or just the energy that's moving in our body. So our having the understanding that our own inner healer, our own wholeness, is trying to whole itself, right? That's why same
Mm.
things happen in our life. We find patterns, or we're facing a challenge in our life, because an internal system is trying to wake up in some way. It's trying to say,
Right.
hey, look at this thing, right? And yes, we might have to forgive people. We might have to forgive ourselves. We might have to do hard work. I'm not saying that this is going to be easy just when you feel like you're whole and complete. But when we start with that foundation, it kind of just it makes it not coming from a place of lack. Uh, I could
Mm.
probably rant about it for another while, but I'll pause there.
So one of the things I heard, like when you were talking about freedom, is that we already have freedom, and the freedom that we have is whole and perfect and complete. And something that we perceive would give us more freedom would actually just be adding to the freedom that we already have, because the freedom is already whole.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it would be adding to it. It would be helping us access a different experience of it. Um, like a
Ah,
different,
okay.
yeah, like we were able to tap into now more of um our capacities. Like, I'll use a
Mm.
running analogy here, because I'm a runner, and I've been running more intensely in the last, and I know you run too, or used to run. I did my first marathon in in the fall. I'm doing another half marathon soon, and it's just been just a lot of joy for me to, like, train and
Yeah, it's so
enjoy
much
that
fun.
enjoy that process. But 5 years ago, I was still a runner, and I was enjoying running too. But I wasn't
Mhm.
I and it's not that I like running more now. Maybe I kind of do, but it's not that I was any less of a runner. I'm just expanding and seeing the capacities, right? As I
Mm.
run longer distances, do other things, right? So do you see how it's coming from a place of, oh, I'm not a good runner until I run a marathon, right? I'm not a good runner until
Right,
this. It's coming from this evolutionary type of
right.
unfolding of, like, it's always enough, and it just becomes more enough, but I get to, it just, I'm kind of expanding out and experiencing more of what's capable in this human experience.
Mm,
So it's not, does that make sense? It's not really, I don't see it as like an
yeah.
addition. It's just like more expansatory.
Yeah.
That's a
No, I
word.
love that. And of course, the running example is perfect for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the long distance running led to long distance hiking for me, which was a whole different level of spirituality and because where I took that
Yes.
personally. But yeah. Um, so on, let's go to meditation because 1 million listens to your meditation. That's crazy. 1 million downloads is something to be, that's a wow. It's something to be proud of. So I believe so much in meditation. I mean, and I, in my book, The Swipe Right Effect, I provide several meditations, and but I am, I am really only 6 years into a life with meditation. And so I was 50 by the time I actually sat down and did meditation. And it was because of trauma in my life that I began to meditate. And I would love it if people would just start meditating because we say so right here, right now. They don't have to have a trauma. But for those people who have been through trauma, my experience is you have this spin cycle in your head, these negative thoughts that are just spinning, spinning, spinning. I call it spin cycle. That's what it felt like for me. And it's hard to turn the noise off so that you can have that quiet and you can have the peace, so you can go to, not really go to another place, but that's kind of how I think of it. So do you have advice for people who don't have a practice but desperately need it because they are having a tough time in their life right now? Just like, how do they start it? What would be some good tips?
I would start by starting with, the famous TED Talk and book, Start with Why. Like
Mm-hmm.
to figure out, to actually share a little bit of why meditation might be helpful. Um, I in so many different areas, having a challenge or not having a challenge, is that if we take the belief that our unconscious is in so many ways, or subconscious, unconscious, we can talk about that. There's
Mm-hmm.
obviously clear differences in that, but our subconscious is often running things in the background that we don't realize for great reasons. And what meditation helps us to do, and this could be really challenging for people too, especially if you have traumatic background. Or I've known people where meditation actually brought up a traumatic memory that they
Right,
forgot about, right? And so that can be a whole, now they're
right.
re-traumatized, and for good reasons they have to, now their time to work with it. But it's also, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that it's the most it's always the most safest thing or the best thing. Obviously, the
Right.
context and container is important, but I think for just healing in some ways, the ability to start to practice letting your nervous system slow down, and letting the training of your thoughts to be on one focus, is a way to shift that thought energy to something else, so that the entire system can start to slow down. It's not just your mind, it's like everything can slow down.
Everything.
And
Right.
then, yeah, energy, it's almost like coaching is a direct way to start to get to these things. Meditation is a
Mm-hmm.
slower process to get to these
Right.
things. It's like you
Yeah.
can do it on your own and start to, as things settle, it's almost like the energy in your system starts to come to a homeostasis, like it's trying to find its way through, and bring up what it needs to bring up, and
Mm-hmm.
heal what it needs to heal. And so and you know I'll speak just on my experience. The reason why I got into, well, not the reason why I got into meditation. I got into meditation because it was a habit of quote unquote successful people. And I was taking in all of these things that these people were saying.
Yeah.
And so that's why I got into meditation. What happened for me through a meditation practice, and I'm not saying this will happen to anyone by any means, especially in 4 months, but um, I had a spiritual awakening. I wasn't a spiritual person, but it brought into my life a spiritual element and a connection with what I call God. You can call whatever you want. I don't think we need to name it, but to the why of like to have something, to be connected to something greater, to feel that our life, that we are being cared for, but actually not only believe that as like a thought, but actually start to feel it through meditation. That's why I meditate, and so
Mm.
that uh, might push some of you away, but that also might attract some of you too. I've been like, okay, so maybe it's more than just
Right.
like, to feel more calm. Like that's great. These are effects of it. But the way that I like talking about it is like you get to imagine, instead of feeling calm, like feeling God, like feeling not, and
Hmm.
there's a whole ego trip that you can go on with this, but to feel this kind of unspeakable type of feeling, this ineffable type of feeling, is what happened to me in my meditation practice, which what led me to this whole new life, this whole path that I've been doing for the last 9 years of leaving my job and writing my book and doing this work that I do now, creating leading meditations, is because what I'm really trying to do is help people in some ways access themselves and hopefully be a vessel, for me, for God to work through me so that it can kind of then communicate
Mm.
through another person. So that's
Mm.
I think a deeper why for maybe people, if that's interesting to you, for you to be, to feel in in union with something greater than yourself. And so how to start is, you can do it as we're listening to this podcast, and just close your eyes and for a moment just relax your shoulders and maybe take an exhale, and clapping, you're meditating. So you just started.
Yeah.
It's There's a lot of apps now. To be more practical, there's many apps. I have a lot of meditations on an app called Insight Timer, and I believe if you sign up for them, they have a free. Their whole app is free. They have a ton, I have over 150 free tracks on Insight Timer, and
Mm.
many free meditations on there, and they also have a free 7-day learn to meditate course. So that's a great place, great resource to check out. They also have a paid version that gives a bunch of other courses, but so much of there is
Hmm.
free. And then you have so many apps: Headspace, Calm, Waking Up, Simple Habit, Aura. I believe they'll all have some intro version, but I believe all of those apps are paid, so you're going to have to hit a paywall at something.
Right.
So I recommend people checking out that. And then I also have on my website, if people want to meditate with me, a 7-day series under the guidance tab on my website, a little 7-day course. Now, um, it could be a nice intro for you. It's 15 minutes a day, and we kind of just go through a little process of self-love as part of it, honoring and accepting where we're at. And so that could be an intro for you. But there's so many resources online, or find locally, depending on where you're at. There's always these little classes happening, or there might be a studio near you, depending on where you're at. So, um, yeah, I would say it's not. It doesn't have to be this big thing. It could just be 2 minutes a day, like grounding into your
Right.
feet,
Right.
and just slowing down. I think there is benefits to a sitting practice, and really sitting, and you don't have to sit cross-legged by any means. You sit on a chair, feet flat on the ground, just some way to keep your spine upright, and and yeah, you got to explore it. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah. I really started with a self-love mantra, just I started with a mantra because if you're repeating 3 words, I am enough, I am enough, there's really your subconscious can't get in because you're just, the repetition helped. But then I started with Insight Timer and started listening to different guided meditations. And my practice now is visualization in the morning and a guided meditation at night. And sometimes it's Bob Proctor, sometimes it's Jack Canfield, just different resources from all the classes that I've taken. I'm a member of Mind Valley, so there's so many great guided meditations, but I will definitely check out yours at louredmond.com.
Yes.
So talk about your book a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us
So,
about your book, the motivation and where it's taken you.
so I had these spiritual experiences, and it started with it started with one experience that was pretty much my decision to stop drinking, and that led to this kind of big opening. And then in the next couple of days, I had more of these experiences, and this was coming from the tail end of 7 months of getting into self-development. And before that was
Mm,
just someone who was just partying and drinking, and not really living with any kind of conscious awareness or intention. And once I found self-development, sort of became almost a new addiction. I started drinking
mm,
less and started feeling this aliveness for life that I had never felt, and started seeing
mm,
new opportunities that I had never thought were possible in my life. And so I was in this kind of development journey through this group that I was in, and then had these spiritual experiences about 7 months after joining that group. And that led me to deciding to quit my job in a very dramatic way, meaning I left with no
mm,
2 week notice, no money saved. I wrote a note to my company, or 3 managers in my company, or the CEO, my manager, my former manager. And I wrote notes to them and letters to them, because the way that I quit was not like a 2 week notice. Um, I just sent an email to my entire company one morning. There's so much more to the story, which is why I wrote the book. But I sent an email to my entire company one morning, and it's, an hour later, I have cops show up at my home. And what happens is they thought my email was a suicide letter, because I was writing about finding a higher calling and needing to go now and needing to like step into this life. And so it was a very dramatic experience, and a very altered state experience for me, having these kind of pretty wild spiritual things opening and happening. And so I
mm.
jumped, I and it wasn't a great thing for me to do, because I left a lot of people hanging at that company. Like, I left a lot of things
Yeah.
not in a good way. And so I burned the bridges. I burned the boats, as you would say. And I jumped into the unknown. And in doing that, um, was supported in incredible ways, and also some incredible lows, incredible highs. But it was about a month after that where I had this huge strike of inspiration that I needed to write this story of the last 7 months, or not even the last 7 months,
Mm,
of my last 15 years of starting to drink, the abuse in that way, kind of the where that took me, how that took me away from my path, and how I got back on that path. And so that's really what the
mm,
story is. The first section of the book is called Self-Sabotage, and that's a lot of stories about my kind of dark experiences with alcohol. And then also I always reflected back to the reader, of like to reflect it back to how, where my story might not be your story, but how, like, these are some examples of where this might be showing up in your life. So there's always a section at the end of each chapter. And then Section 2 is self exploration. So this is when, like,
mm.
you kind of realize you're sabotaging a little bit, and now you start seeking. Right? Maybe you realize that something needs to change, and you start on
Yeah.
that journey of seeking. And so I kind of tell that story of the people that came into my life, and resources and practices I started doing, meditating, journaling, all these things that we hear about. And I just line that out in this book, again, amidst a lot of story. And from that, the third section is self-discovery. So after we
Mm.
explore, and by the way, I'm still discovering myself, so but the book could still be written.
Yes, we all
But
are.
yes, but it was like what more so the accumulation of all of that work, and was only 7 months, but it was just, and then that's why I think I needed to write the story, because this all happened so fast that I needed to like process what happened. And and then so the third section is self-discovery, and kind of tells a little bit of the more woo-woo or um wild spiritual stuff that took place. And really a call to the reader to, like, step into what's calling them and calling forth. There's a lot of people that have read that book that, then they quit their job, and that tends to have that effect on people. So I'm not saying everyone should quit their job like I did by any means. Don't do that. Actually, you should probably start figuring things out before you just jump into the unknown. But I learned a
Yeah.
lot in doing that. So yeah, it took 2 years project. Book's called Find Your Truth, a modern day story about letting go of addiction and finding life's purpose. And super proud
Mm.
of that work. And I'm excited to write more.
Oh, that's awesome. We have so much in common in our stories. It's just so interesting. Yeah. I retired and set off to find my life purpose, leaving the news business. And yeah. So, and then that whole, um, you know, taking accountability, taking back your power, changing from a victim to a creator. I just feel like our paths are so similar there. But anyway, I hope people will check out Find Your Truth.
Yeah.
And, if they quit their job, they quit their job. Are you working on a new book now?
Not physically, but I feel like I've been working on it for the last 9 years, like energetically, if that makes sense. Like I think
Yeah.
I know what I'm having a sense of what it's gonna be. I'm not. It feels like it's in a germination phase still, and I'm
Mhm.
waiting for when that kind of finally pops up. But so yeah, so yes and no in some ways.
Well, if you've got, I don't know, 150 meditations on Insight Timer, you're obviously writing other things. And
A lot,
that I
yes.
can, yeah, I know. I have my weekly LinkedIn newsletter, which translates into a lot of other things. Um, and that kind of keeps my creativity going. And I kind of look at that weekly obligation to my followers on LinkedIn and those who follow me on my email list. That's me writing my next book. Like I'm working out the book in my head, and that comes from when I was a newspaper owner. I had a columnist who was a psychiatrist, Dr. James Welburn, and he agreed to do the column for free because it was going to make him write the book, but he had to maintain the rights to the content,
100%.
and he did it. He did it in I think 32 weeks. He had his book, and he kept writing for us. He was great, but he was an adolescent psychiatrist. So there you go. Maybe you can do that.
No,
You
that's
should pull all your
exactly it.
meditations into something.
Exactly it. I write newsletters to become it. I have 7 courses on Insight Timer, and in many ways they are my book. Like they are that book for sure. I just need to like put together like the content from a lot of that. So yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. So that kind of just is a perfect segue to my next question, which is habits. I'm writing right now. My thing that's just taking over my brain is self-care. I just released a self-care checklist, 10 essential questions to determine your level of self-care. And a lot of what I believe and what the empowerment practices in my book are, let's make these positive things a habit. And how can we, what does it take to do that? And there's 100 different answers to that. Intentionality, presence. There's many things to that. But wondering if you have habits that keep your life on track, and if there, I don't know if there's anything you might want to share about how you form that habit. But I think meditation is like one of the biggest game changers for me, and exercise is always a part of my life. But do you have other habits that keep you on track?
Yeah, so if we're talking about habits, I'm a big proponent for anyone that's like trying to form a new habit, and this is nothing new said, but um, for the things that are tough, the things that are new, first thing in the morning, and then habit stacking. So,
Yes.
um, and obviously many of the habit researchers and writers, talk about this, but we have the most energy and will first thing in the morning. So to
Hmm.
try to bring in a new habit like a meditation, um, it's so much easier to wake up and go meditate than to have a whole day and then find it, in 20 minutes at like 7 o'clock or something. And so,
Right.
once we can start, it's just like a domino effect. For me, I meditated in the morning for years and years now, and now I've been just, because I switched probably a year and a half ago to morning workouts. So I flipped my schedule in some ways, and in many ways, like meditation has been it's been a little harder to stick to the evening, and we going back and forth with different habits, so it's always different seasons of life. But what I found is if you can just stack your morning, then one good habit flows into the next good habit. Like meditation, flows into journaling, which flows into your day, right? That could be it. This or could flows into you where you work. I've actually been working with this is very new for me and something I never really have done, but I've been working with an alchemy card deck. Like I've never worked with kind of like a
Uh,
tarot deck like that. Like it's just as a
yeah.
morning fun practice to just spark my creativity and just do something different. I don't know. I think we also sometimes can get in a rut of certain habits, and I'm going to journal about what I'm grateful for. And we're kind of doing it almost out of obligation
Yes.
than actually like feeling gratitude. So, you know,
Yes.
maybe
I
you're
went
not in
through
that
that
rut.
last year.
Maybe you're not in that rut, but it's
Yeah.
important to change things up a little bit. But it's really the stacking. It's like if you can do it in the morning, and some of you might be, I don't have kids yet, so I understand there's like timing and maybe there's things that need to be done, but also like doing things like with things that you're already doing. So let's say you want to start a some kind of self-reflective practice, but and then, you walk your dog every morning, so maybe you do it while walking your dog. Maybe it's like a mindful, I'm sure you can find mindful dog walking online 100%. If it's not there, someone go create it because it's probably people are searching it.
Maybe we could team up on that.
Yeah. So like you can kind of, how do you bring in like these practices into things that you're already doing? You just started to do them in a new way. Or maybe you
Hmm.
ask, you download, your checklist, and maybe before you go on the walk your dog in the morning, you ask a question and you go walk with that question or something and let it kind of work on
Hmm.
you. So it's
Yeah.
it's really nice to have that. And then the other piece that can be really great for habits is to have someone else that's doing it with you, right? Both as a
Hmm.
way for you're not feeling like it's like you're doing it alone. Like for me, I talked about that marathon. I had my brother-in-law who was also training for the marathon, and we didn't. It's not like we were checking in each day, but knowing that he was also doing it kind of gives you more accountability to like show up in your own
Yeah.
way. So having someone that you're trying to form a new habit with is there's a lot of research that we're so much more accountable when we're doing it together. So those are a few
Right.
ideas. And like I said, my habits of meditation, journaling, and reading and working out, those have been pretty solid in different ways for years. And then things that I'm trying to add in that go on and off are learning piano and learning Italian. So those two things have,
Italiano.
yeah, those two things have been what I've
Awesome.
been working on.
Yeah. I got so excited when you said habit stacking because that's, I haven't rolled out yet. Maybe by the time this is out, I will have rolled it out, but I'm about to release a new program called Momentum Revolution. And it's about setting your new routine. And I'm using habit stacking. And I think it's just the little goals, one on top of the other, and but forming that routine in your day that gives you stability, and yes, accountability is just huge. So it'll be a one-on-one coaching, but it'll also be a small group coaching, like 5 people. So I
That's
love
amazing.
it. Habit stacking. I'm
Yeah.
so excited about it. Once I discovered it, I was like, I know my next thing.
And then it just goes on autopilot. Once you dial that in for like 2 months, it's so hard to not do your habit. Like it takes
Yeah,
energy to not do it. And it's a wild
right.
phenomena. It really is.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, and I guess, now that I look back, that is exactly how I really got meditation into my life. That, and it was the meditation, the gratitude journal, the little rock by the side of the bed every night. I thought of something, the best thing that happened to me today. That was from a book. And that helped me form some, but she gave you 28 different things and I picked two, right? I did them all for the 28 days, but I think it's called The Magic by Rhonda Byrne. And it just gives you 28 different things, kind of up levels your gratitude game. And then, so I think that's the important part. And you talk just, just to go to accountability. If, running is awesome to have an accountability partner. I don't think I would have made it through any of my half marathons if I hadn't had somebody waiting on me every day. But that's why coaching is important. And I think coaching is becoming more and more acceptable. It doesn't feel weird for people to have a life coach. I mean, it's about guidance, it's about accountability. And I mean, I think I've had a coach, different coaches on and off since 2009. Started with a business coach. My year, my where I traveled for a year and took a sabbatical. I had a life coach because I had a goal, and that was I was seeking my life purpose. And without her, I just would have been traveling. It wouldn't have been traveling with a purpose. And
Mm.
she really was the only one holding me accountable to my goal of finding my purpose. And so I think, I love what you're doing. I love everything you said on your website about, helping you live a life of truth, beauty, and goodness. I think all coaches want that. And so thank you for doing what you do.
Yes.
I love.
W- we can't do it alone. Like to think that it's so it's so nice to have someone just in our corner, and it's yeah, it's really invaluable to have a coach. So yeah, the fact that there was like a stigma to it, and obviously there's stigma to therapy, but it's like I think we're waking up to the fact that it's really valuable to have
Mm,
people there, especially that have walked the path before you, that can kind of just yeah help you in the various ways that you could use help. And so yeah, constantly, ever since I quit my job, I started working with a coach, and have done different worked with different coaches over the years that have been incredibly valuable.
yeah. I think that that's the thing that surprises people. Well, I see surprise on their face when I talk about the fact that I have a coach. They're like, but you're a coach. Why do you need a coach? I'm like, I think everybody needs a coach.
It's
A
I love
coach
the
for a therapist. I don't know.
if if your coach like your coach or therapist doesn't have a coach or therapist, you should run, like, because that means like they're not having place to check themselves. They don't have a place to like to do their own work. Like we're all human, right? We all have our own work to do. So yes, 100,000%.
Yeah. And one more point to that is there are so many coaches now, and it's because we're all finding our niche. Like I know who I can help. I can't help everybody.
Hmm.
My experience informs how I can help people. Your experience informs how and who you can help. And so I really encourage people to do their research, put in the keywords when you're looking for a coach, ask for references. But um, I think the coaches are able to get more and more niche with who they help um, because of our experience, and our life informs how we help and who we help.
They become our
So,
gifts. Yeah, our wounds are, as Robert Bly says, it's where our genius lies. So those things that we've gone through, like we have a more embodied sense to be able to support someone through that. Not that you can't support people through things that you haven't gone through, but yeah, there is something in at least just inviting in who's it for, and then that tends to also widen a little bit. I don't know, it depends. I've been both fortunate and cursed that I have worked with a wide variety of people, and I'm just starting now to like let myself really niche in some ways, and it's scary for me because it feels like I'm closing
Mm,
doors, but at the same
mm,
time I know that everything keeps pushing me in this direction. So yeah, I was fortunate that I didn't have to start as a niche because I did have a wide audience that Insight Timer allowed me to coach. And there was a niche in the sense that people meditate and people had a spiritual inclination, so that was like that,
right.
but that's not a huge niche necessarily. But so yeah, so I've been like working on kind of getting more clear on what I love doing and who I love helping, and yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Who is your ideal client now?
So my ideal client, and I have to get out of. Okay, so my ideal client is, I would say, someone who wants to be in the wellness space in some way, right? They want to share, maybe they got into meditation and they want to share it with others. Maybe they're a coach and they're trying to figure out how to really do what they do in a way that keeps fulfilling them, in a way that's not just about dollars and cents, but a way that's like, but also at the same time, they don't sometimes believe that they can make a living doing it. So it's like breaking out of
Hmm.
that. And I think where I, I get a, I have, and I used to joke about this in a positive way. I actually have a newsletter that's called God's Network Marketing Scheme, because there's the coaches coaching coaches coaching coaches phenomena that could end up happening. And so when I say this is my niche, I'm like, oh, am I putting myself in that? But I believe, though, what the beauty of that is that yes, like it's the greatest, because like we're like opening up and growing ourselves, and then we help others like figure out that they can help others, and then they can help others, and so it's just a bunch of people helping others, and I think it's really great. So but I've had resistance and like not being a coach for the people, but coaching like other, coaches and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's also been, I run a mastermind for meditation teachers, coaches, creators, spiritual guides, and it's the best thing I've ever created, or not the best thing I've ever created. I'll say that it's the best program and group coaching experience and that I've ever put into the world. And it's just he's reflecting back to me as like, oh, this is where I want to spend time. Like it lights me up to get on those calls like none other. And
Yeah.
when you're, I have certain clients that light me up to get on the calls. And there might be some clients that not as lit up. So it's like starting to
Hmm.
let yourself be like, oh, this is it, because I'm excited to get
Right.
on this call and it's super fun. And so, yeah, it's a
In the
process.
flow.
Yes.
I love how that feels like the flow. So, how can people reach you? What's the best way to get on your email list, find out about your mastermind, your program?
Yeah, so if you just go to louredmond.com, and just under the love what you do, love who you are, not in that order, there's a confidence training guide. It's a little PDF that if you're looking just to have a little bit more confidence and trust, there's a lot of tools on there that'll give you some really actionable things right away. So you just click on that and you can sign up. You'll get on my newsletter. And then there's also a guidance tab that has some other free things. But that's a good place. And then if you're on Instagram, just search Lou Redmond and Insight Timer. Come find and meditate with me on Insight Timer if you're using that app, and if you're not, it's a great app. So check it out.
No, definitely. It's so funny because that was my first one.
Great.
And I listened to oh gosh, the Esther over and over and over again. What was her name? Abraham and
Abraham
Esther.
Hicks. Sure. Yep. 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 Of
Yes,
course.
yes, yeah. Um, yeah, and she just had a beautiful meditation, and that was when I was going through my divorce, and it was just like over and over again. She says all these lovely things, and
Yes.
that's how I went to bed every night with Esther and Abraham.
It's great.
Abraham Hicks. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, Lou, thank you for coming on, and I will go find you on Insight Timer. I'm excited to Have to re-download that one. And thank you very much for coming on.
Yay. Thanks so much, Kelly. This was so much fun.
It was. Thanks.
Kelly's book is available on Amazon and through your local bookstores. Look for the Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. Kelly's interviews with 10 friends from around the world unlock powerful truths to getting your new life started.